So the situation between the Liberal government, Air Canada, and the Air Canada flight attendants is getting nasty, like extremely malicious. And you're going to potentially see these thousands, millions of dollars in fines towards Air Canada flight attendants that are currently on strike, which would then be put onto COOP, which is the union. So yeah, that's not very good. And then Mark Carney also met with the Liberal Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, to discuss how Pierre Poilievre needs to be on the side of Mark Carney and no longer be in opposition, because Canada needs to work fully together and just ignore all of the bad things. That was kind of weird. There's a lot to take a look at in this video, and I do hope you stick around for the full thing. But before we get into it, I actually want to share something that's kind of like a little bit vulnerable. So a little while ago, within the past 6 months or even a year, I did publicly say that I want to start going to church. I want to start bringing my family to church. And I did that yesterday. I went to a church for the first time in probably like 19 years. And it was different. I went to a different style of church, but that doesn't really matter. What was weird about it was, and good weird, not bad weird, I have no like attachment to the hymns and haws or the songs, right? The words, like not really, because I'm just kind of been on the outside. I understand that our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ and God, those are very like sensitive things to be saying. But the actual verses of songs and things like that, I have no attachment to that. I'm an outsider coming into church for the first time in 19 or 20 years. And I started feeling things that I wasn't expecting. I don't think I was even prepared for it. In about the first 20 or 30 minutes, there was a lot of music happening and singing songs, and it messed me up. Like my body started sweating profusely, and I was holding back tears. I don't even know why. Like you understand the mental sabotage that I was doing on myself to avoid crying at a church in public. I don't even know why I was being so hard on myself. I was like, you're not going to cry. This is a song. What the heck is the matter with you? Don't cry, you little wuss. And I'm looking around the room and I see a bunch of people that are, I mean, the majority of everyone was vibing, right? There were some people that had emotional responses as well, and that's their own prerogative. But I saw a lot of young people and old people that were enjoying and singing the songs, and they were not having any emotional response to it. And I'm thinking, what the heck is wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? So I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's, well, it's certainly not bad, but it definitely made me think, why am I having this response to songs that I don't even understand or like know the words to? But I guess it hit me in the feels, and I think I'm going to go back next Sunday. So yeah, that's a little vulnerable piece of what I did on Sunday. But let me know if you guys partake in church or if you're religious at all, because that was kind of interesting, and I definitely want to explore that quite further. So yeah, before we get into it even further, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. Now we're going to take a look at some international stuff, specifically what's going on in America today. You have President Zelensky is meeting with Trump's special representative in Washington. It's not in the Oval Office, so Zelensky felt comfortable wearing a t-shirt.
How are you, sir? Okay. Thank you so much. Hi, good to see you. Great. How are you?
Thanks, President. Nice to see you.
We can see you.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. I know your time is busy.
A little bit.
What I wanted to do just briefly was to, I've got a meeting with the President, the Vice President, and the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State this morning.
Thank you so much. So first of all, we are thankful to the President for this invitation and the 4 months of what we will have. It's important signals about security guarantees and
that's why it's important that we are together with the United States and Europe, and the president accepted the common meeting also after our bilateral common meeting with Europeans. And so I'm so grateful that such big countries as UK, Finland, and and President von der Leyen, the Secretary Rutte, that they will come, and I think this will be important meeting, and we will speak about architecture. I think so. We will have time to speak about architecture of security guarantees, and this is what really I think the most important.
Good.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is a pretty big day because Zelensky's going to be meeting with President Trump and European officials to discuss, a deal between the rest of the world and Russia to hopefully put an end to the war. So I'd love to know what you guys think down below. Do you think that this is going to be a favorable outcome, or do you think it's going to be a nothing burger? Let me know where you guys stand on that. And then Mark Carney was caught in the hallways of Parliament, and this is what happened. Let's have a look.
Can we get an update on how trade talks are going? How are they going?
Good morning. Bonjour.
How are trade talks going?
Actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that, and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector. We'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence, what we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive.
What's your advice to President Zelensky regarding should he accept any deal?
I gave that advice yesterday in a meeting with President Zelensky and the coalition.
And what was it? What was it?
Do you have any comment on Air Canada, sir? Anything to say to Air Canada union workers?
I'll say the following. We recognize very much the critical role that flight attendants play in keeping Canadians and their families safe as they travel, comfortable as they travel. And it's important that they're compensated equitably at all times, fairly at all times. That's the reason why there have been negotiations over the course of the last 8 months. It is disappointing that those negotiations did not come to an agreement, and it was the judgment of both the union and the company that they were at an impasse. That's not my judgment, it's their judgment. And so we are in a situation where literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians and visitors to our country are being disrupted by this action. I urge both parties to resolve this as quickly as possible, and the Minister will have more to say. Minister Haji will have more to say later.
Did the government make a mistake imposing binding arbitration on the weekend?
So it's really interesting that Mark Carney's come out and is portraying himself as being quite pro-union, especially almost siding with the flight attendants, which is contradictory to what his Minister of Labor, Patty Hidju, announced over the weekend, that the strike needs to basically end and a return to work order is set in place while arbitration happens. And then the union said, yeah, we're not doing that. And today's response is a little bit different. So the newest news is actually the Honorable Lisa McCormack here has this to say. What's next? Section 100 and 101 Labor Code. If a strike is illegal, the punishment is a $1,000 fine per day that the strike continues to COOP, a $10,000 fine to the officer of COOP who authorizes the strike, and then each flight attendant who doesn't come back to work can be fined up to $1,000 in total. This is in response to basically the government has now deemed that the strike is illegal by the labor board. And this is where we're getting into very tricky waters here. The federal government is, on one hand, Mark Carney saying, well, we understand that people need to be paid appropriately, But then his ministers are saying, yeah, no, it's an illegal strike and you have to get your ass back to work. And this is opening up a can of worms. Fines up the wazoo. Not only is COOP and flight attendants facing fines, but now the government of Canada is probably going to experience a massive class action lawsuit. And if it was 100% entirely based on public opinion, the opinion of most Canadians is on the side of the flight attendants, because even liberals are going, oh, this, like liberal supporters are going, well, this isn't right. Flight attendants deserve to be paid. And even conservatives are going, well, this isn't right. Flight attendants deserve to be paid. And so you're left with the government being the minority here in this decision, which never bodes over well. But let's take a look at the full update so everyone is fully caught up to speed.
Air Canada flight attendants defying a back-to-work order is being called unlawful. That from Canada's Industrial Relations Board. The board is demanding the Canadian Union of Public Employees direct their members back to work by noon Eastern Time. Now, the work stoppage leaves thousands of Air Canada ticket holders struggling to find ways to reach their destinations. The airline says it is planning to get planes back in the air this evening, but it's unclear how that will happen. The flight attendants were ordered back to work Saturday, by the federal jobs minister, and the directive sent both parties to binding arbitration, but the union is challenging the decision, calling it unconstitutional. And just a few moments ago, the Prime Minister was asked about the standoff between Air Canada and its flight attendants.
It is disappointing that those negotiations did not come to an agreement, and it was the judgment of both the union and the company that they were at an impasse. That's not my judgment, it's their judgment. And so we are in a situation where literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians and visitors to our country are being disrupted by this action. I urge both parties to resolve this as quickly as possible.
And there's also an expectation there that we'll hear from the Transport Minister on this potentially soon. Meanwhile, at airports across the country, the confusion and frustration is palpable.
I'm a tourist, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. For that reason, I'm here to try some solution.
Air Canada is strongly advising travelers not to go to the airport unless they have a flight confirmed with another airline. The airline says it can try to rebook customers on other carriers, but warned capacity is limited due to peak summer travel season. Air Canada is also offering those with canceled flights a refund or future credit for travel. And the CBC's Jamie Strachan is at Toronto's Pearson International Airport and joins me now live. So, Jamie, what is it like right now at the airport?
Good morning, Arthi. Well, you can look behind me at the Air Canada picket line that's been loud and active here since I got on the ground here at about 6 o'clock this morning. And it doesn't look like a group that's set to be back on the job in 2 hours, as the Industrial Relations Board has ordered that these workers end this unlawful strike by noon. There's no indication that that's going to happen. You really have, a number of competing narratives that kind of all add up to a real sense of uncertainty right now. You have that that order by the Industrial Relations Board to get back on the job by noon, after their similar order was defied yesterday. You have a union who's still telling its workers, I spoke to CUPE in the last hour, continue out on the picket lines, continue this job action. And frankly, Arthi, in talking to workers this morning, as I mentioned, I've been here for the last 4 hours, this is a group that appears, in talking to them, to have a lot of resolve. They have a lot of grievances that they've been dealing with Air Canada. They're coming out of a 10-year collective agreement. A lot of things are festering. So there is a sense of resolve. There's also a sense of uncertainty. People are worried about their jobs. But in speaking to flight attendants, it seems for now this is a fight they're willing to engage in. Here's a gentleman who's been in the air for at least about 20 years that I spoke to moments ago.
Personally, as a flight attendant, the only way I'm going back to work was with if CUPE says that something else has been negotiated, and if CUPE gives the go-ahead to go back to work.
And Arthi, as of now, CUPE has not given workers any instruction. Much of their leadership is holed up at a hotel a few kilometers from Pearson Airport. But you can hear and you can see behind me, these picket lines continue. No indication that these workers are set to put down their signs and their megaphones and get back on the job in what would be less than 2 hours. It just doesn't seem plausible at this point.
And Jamie, Air Canada says they plan to resume some of their operations tonight. How does it plan on doing that?
Good question. I mean, it doesn't seem probable, as I've mentioned at this point. You go inside the airport, you know, at the Air Canada desks, it's usually bustling. This is their main hub in Toronto. All you see is a board full of canceled, 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 canceled. You see that up and down the board. And you see these picket lines. You see a sense of resolve amongst members. And clearly by defying this order yesterday, by continuing to defy it today, the union, its members, willing to wade into really kind of uncharted waters, you know, for a Canadian union. It's rare that we've seen a union defy an order to go back to work. So is there a way that they get back on the job this afternoon and somehow Air Canada resumes getting planes up in the air this evening? I'm sure there's a quick, you know, roadmap to this, but right now, members, CUPE says that the only way they're getting back on the job is through a resolution at the bargaining table with the employer. At this stage in time, the two sides aren't talking. So how, if Air Canada is able to get flights up in the air this evening? I'm not an aviation expert, but, you know, being here on the ground right now over the last 4 hours doesn't seem like a possibility at this point in time.
For this, Jamie,
no, this is going to be a very, very bumpy ride. And the harder that the government pushes back on what the flight attendants are doing, the more the government gets involved, the worse this is actually going to get for Air Canada and for anyone who is flying Air Canada. This could very well just be a few days, but I don't think that it's going to be. I think that this could potentially be weeks or even months. And it's now a game of chicken. If the flight attendants come back, they're going to be heavily penalized and they're going to have to settle for something that is not what they nearly enough what they want to. But Air Canada is also losing a lot of money. Now, here's the thing with Air Canada is in the past, they have been heavily government subsidized with these bailouts, right? So what I think that's going to happen is the strike is going to continue for quite some time. And the government is just going to give Air Canada, not loan Air Canada, but give Air Canada the money that they are losing out on, which is going to be millions and millions and hundreds of millions and potentially up into the billions, depending on how long this really does go on. So I do want to pass the question off to you as we kind of move on from that news story. How do you feel about this? Are you on team flight attendants or are you on team government, which is saying get back to work? Let me know where you guys stand. And now we got to take a look at what the heck is going on with Doug Ford, because wow, he met with Prime Minister Mark Carney and he is totally on Team Liberal. Let's have a look.
All right, we want to take you live now to Ottawa. Here's Ontario Premier Doug Ford after his meeting with the Prime Minister.
By making sure that we reduce taxes, get rid of unnecessary regulatory burdens off the backs of companies and compete. You know, I always said, you know, that we can never predict what Donald Trump is going to do, but we can predict, we can create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and invest in direct foreign investment. The numbers came out a little while ago. Mind you, it was 2024. We had 409 companies, $39.875 billion, and 25,000 jobs created in Ontario. But keep in mind, that's before Donald Trump. So we have to beat him at his own game and make sure that we're more competitive and onshore as many products as possible.
So did you guys agree to any concrete action on that front today?
We had a great discussion. Nothing happens immediately in that room, but we're on the same page. We have a great partnership, and we're going to work jointly together to make sure that we're competitive and we create jobs.
How likely is it, do you think, we're going to get a deal right now, percentage-wise? What would you put on the chances of Canada and the U.S. getting a trade deal?
Well, the main one is the USMCA Kuzma deal. That's really the main one. But in the meantime, we have to hold firm, and we have to create the environment. For instance, the steel sector. You know, the steel sector, we have to look at the large infrastructure projects, shipbuilding, where Algoma up in Ontario, they do the flatbed steel, and make sure that large-scale infrastructure projects like a pipeline, the steel pipes come from Ontario.
Was your sense from the Prime Minister now that Canada just has to accept that we're going to have tariffs from the United States until we renegotiate USMCA? Like, is there any movement on getting those removed?
Well, I won't speak for the Prime Minister. What I can tell you, we're united on the message of let's start worrying about how we can be competitive here. Donald Trump is so unpredictable. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing tomorrow morning.
Oh, come on.
So let's start focusing on creating that environment.
But is there an acceptance? Is there an acceptance, I guess, from leaders that we'll just have the tariffs?
Again, the Prime Minister will speak on that, but the President is unpredictable. He'll come out with some cockamamie thing tomorrow that we don't even know about.
So do you think that Mark Carney is being too elbows down in response to that unpredictability?
Not at all. He's doing an incredible job. He's working collaboratively with 12 other premiers and myself, and working as Team Canada. And he's doing a very, very good job, in my opinion. Put in his position, dealing with Donald Trump. We'll stop worrying about Donald Trump. We'll start focusing on Ontario and Canada and all the other provinces and territories.
Premier, today is Pierre Poilievre's by-election. If he gets elected, I'm wondering, what's your advice to him going into the fall sitting of the Parliament?
Work with the Prime Minister.
How so?
It's Team Canada. You know, let's put our political stripes aside and start working together collectively on large infrastructure projects, on other areas that he can cooperate with the government.
Last question. Would you have plans to meet with Poilievre to push that message and make sure that he is working with the Prime Minister?
All I want to do is move forward collectively as a government. I don't care about political stripes. The person I'm working with right now is the Prime Minister of the day, and as far as I'm concerned, he's doing a really, really good job considering the position he's been put in. I challenge anyone to try to deal with Donald Trump, myself included. He's a different type of cat. But we're united. We know what we need to do, and we know that we need to cut the regulatory burdens off of companies, lower taxes, put money back into people's pockets, support companies that need investment to grow and expand here, and onshore the procurement side. It's absolutely critical.
That's very interesting. The fact that he no longer wants to see any political stripes. It doesn't matter if you're right or you're left, and we all need to work together. But that's very weird. Very, very weird. One, he's cozied up at the fireplace until midnight at his cottage with Mark Carney, drinking hot chocolate with marshmallows and sitting in their PJs, telling stories to each other, solving all the world's problems. That's like a real thing that's happened between the two of them. But the thing that's the most weird is, why is he saying this about Pierre Poilievre, who's an opposition leader who has virtually no real political power other than to oppose? And, you know, he's not like he's not in power right now, right? Yeah, power of his party, but not in actual government power. Why isn't he saying this about BC Premier David Eby or Wab Kinew in Manitoba, who are actually in power and in government right now? Why, when it comes to the pipeline, right? Because the pipeline from east to west, our Canada First pipeline or whatever they're calling it, is kind of being held up by Manitoba, by BC, and also by Quebec. So why is, I understand the question was about Pierre, but if you're asking people to put down their swords and to just all work together because the biggest threat right now to our economy is Donald Trump, which is just factually absolutely insane, why aren't you also in the same breath of air saying, well, you know what, people that are actually really being pests to our country moving forward are these premiers that are actually in power. Pierre is not in power right now. As the leader of the opposition, holding the government accountable means talking about it and making press conferences about it and YouTube videos and YouTube clips about it. But actually putting forward legislation, you need backing from other parties. And the Conservatives, it's very weird because the Green Party has like one seat, so irrelevant. So they need the NDP or the Bloc or the Liberals to side with them, which historically is kind of tough, as we saw with Justin Trudeau. So in terms of actual power that the Conservative Party has, it's not really a lot of power. And so that's weird for Ford to say, you know what, put your stripes down, stop holding the government accountable by always talking about it and somewhat opposing, but rather let's all work together, which inherently isn't like working together. Yes, I think that we should, when it's like warranted, when it's actually good ideas. Yet to be found, I suppose.
For Air Canada workers, what's your message?
Well, everyone deserves a fair wage for a day's work. They order them back to work, and I think it has to be in the best interest of the workers, the company, and most importantly, the people of Canada. So I'm glad they'll be sitting down and talking, but let's keep the airlines moving.
Isn't it a complete disaster, though? I mean, we've got the unions refusing, the workers say they won't go back to work. We've got thousands of people stranded. They don't know how they're getting home. Like, this is not worked out, right?
That's up to the federal government to sit and make sure they sit down on the table. That always happens when you have labor issues, but they'll work it out. It's happened before, and they'll get things moving.
Okay, thanks everyone. Do you have any plans to go to BC anytime soon?
Not lately. I won't. But when they need me, I'll be down there giving my colleague Howard Lutnick a little poke.
Okay, we are just hearing.
Oh my goodness, man. Doug Ford likes to puff up his chest and try to peacock. It's so embarrassing. The guy is just this weak sauce liberal who pretends and LARPs as if he's something important, and he really has no leg to stand on when it comes to threatening America. And it's going to hurt. It's always going to backfire. The harder you try to stand up to America, or specifically Trump, the worse things get. And so I just going to pass the question off to you. Do you support Doug Ford in this, or do you think that he's a blue liberal? Let me know what you guys think. And now we're going to end this video off by taking a look at a press conference that's taking place right now as I'm recording the video for the Air Canada union strike, because they're prepared to go to jail over this strike.
Labor Relations, the CIRB has declared that this is a lawful strike. The strike is over. They're saying, you know that people will go to jail potentially, and your union will face hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in fines. What's the limit that you're prepared to exert here to try to make your point?
There's no limit. We're going to stay strong. We're going to stay committed to making sure that those workers can do the job that they love doing and actually be able to afford a roof over their heads, to afford caring for their families. And if it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it. If it means our union being fined, then so be it. We're looking for a solution here. Our members want a solution here, but that solution has to be found at a bargaining table.
There has been a relative amount of goodwill from the public.
So the Air Canada flight attendant union, and I mean, the union controls this, right? So even if the flight attendants say, well, hold on, I'm not ready to go to jail, they're still in a position to have to strike. And if they don't strike, then there are internal union penalties that could occur. But this is where it gets a little bit complicated and a little bit controversial. But for the most part, it seems like the flight attendants are unanimously on board with the union's messaging. And I just kind of want to pass the question off to you. Do you think that there are going to be any arrests? Because if that's what they are saying, then that means that they are not willing to take a deal that is, anything other than what they have presented. And it doesn't seem like Air Canada is willing to even come forward and meet them part of the way. And so this could get very, very ugly. So hopefully it doesn't get ugly, but it very well could. And so I'd like to know your guys' predictions. Do you think anyone's going to get arrested? Yes or no? Let me know your reasoning down below. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.